Hello, everyone. My research is about the communication needs and media habits of livestock farmers in Misamis Oriental towards addressing climate change. Media usage has become a staple in everyone's lives upon waking up. Some turn on the radio and go about their daily routine with news and radio dramas. Some access their smartphones to check the latest update on social media. Doing it repetitively creates a media habit. More than just keeping tab of the stability of media consumers, media habit studies should also be conducted in the grassroots level in order to ensure that relevant information are trickled down to these oftentimes neglected media consumers. Agriculture, just like media, is going through changes through time in terms of methods, technologies, and practices in accordance with a changing environment. Being the backbone of the Philippine economy and is the most vulnerable sector of the country due to extreme and changing weathers brought about by climate change, farmers go through information resources in order to increase productivity using fewer resources. The concept of disaster used to be an unfamiliar reality to Misamis Oriental until Typhoon Sandong happened. As reported by the Inquirer on 2014, the cost of damage has reached 2.1 billion with 309 million pesos damage in agriculture. Since then, the concept of extreme and unpredictable weather changes became something that the people in northern Mindanao always watch out for. To meet the communication needs of this sector, there is a need of information, learning, and sharing among farmers, the government, and the scientists through the science communicators. However, little is known or reported in on how such programs and information awareness endeavors of the government and other organizations reach to the local farmers in Misamis Oriental and how it actually helped them address issues of climate change in their farming methods. Also, if communication needs of the farmers towards climate change have also been addressed. Further, how such media exposure helped them adapt to climate change or help mitigate its effects by their farming methods, as well as their communication needs in addressing climate change issues in their farming. The researchers assume that due to the evident impacts of climate change, it creates a repetition among these farmers to seek information, therefore, creating a media habit specific on climate change. However, it may also be assumed that due to deliberate seeking of information from a wide array of media platforms, farmers may face challenges in looking for specific information that would satisfy their need to be aware and be educated towards climate change. By that, the researcher aims to explore the media habits or exposure of the farmers of Misamis Oriental, and in turn, how does their media consumption or exposure help them address the issues of climate change in their farming methods. Further, this study will also explore their communication needs in adapting to climate change. The statement of the problem. What are the communication needs and media habits of the livestock farmers in Misamis Oriental towards addressing climate change? Specifically, it seeks to answer the following questions. What are the media habits of livestock farmers in seeking information about climate change? Where do they get information? What particular medium would farmers prefer? What are the specific communication needs of livestock farmers in addressing climate change? And what is the relationship between media habits and practices that livestock farmers do in addressing climate change? Objectives of the study. The general objective of the study is to determine the communication needs and media habits of the livestock farmers in Misamis Oriental towards addressing climate change. Determine the media habits of livestock farmers in seeking information about climate change. Identify their sources of information. Find out communication channel preference of the livestock farmers in Misamis Oriental in seeking about information on climate change. Describe the specific communication needs of the livestock farmers in addressing climate change, and determine the relationship between media habits and how they cope with the livestock farming in facing climate change. This study shall mainly strive to address the Sustainable Development Goal number 13, which is to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts, particularly the following indicator: improve education, awareness raising, and human and institutional capacity on climate change mitigation, adaptation, impact reduction, and early warning through communications and various types of medium in the agricultural sector. Specifically, the research is important on the following components of the study. To the livestock farmers in Misamis Oriental, when they are informed, they can be empowered to adapt to climate change in their farming methods and, in turn, not to greatly contribute to the negative impacts of certain livestock farming practices, thus to climate change as well as to increase productivity. To support the Department of Agriculture Regional Field Office 10 through the Regional Agriculture and Fisheries section by identifying the communication needs of the livestock farmers in Misamis Oriental in addressing issues on climate change adaptation in their farming methods. The study will also be significant to the science communicators and to science communication in general to improve the public's understanding and use of scientific knowledge, particularly on climate change adaptation, specifically to encourage farmers to take actions through meaningful and understandable communication materials on the interlinked relationship of climate change and agriculture. Further, to contribute on the improvement on the overall content of different communication resources on climate change to foster socially responsible actions among the farmers in their farming methods in ensuring sustainable agriculture. This study shall be a major contribution to the province of Misamis Oriental, specifically in the agricultural sector. There might have already been numerous endeavors by the government on reaching out to the farmers. However, there has not been an evaluative method nor a feedback mechanism in order to improve, add, and assess the information and knowledge transfer that their programs currently have. According to the provincial agriculturist of Misamis Oriental, Benjamin Resma reiterated that the biggest challenge faced by the farmers is the unpredictable weather condition. Impacts are enumerated in the study Climate Change and Livestock, Impacts, Adaptation, and Mitigation. Quantity and quality of feeds, water, livestock diseases, heat stress, decreased animal production, biodiversity, food security. Thus, according to Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, there is a need to strengthen access to knowledge and transfer mechanisms for sustainable and productive practices. However, literature shows that even today, there are still challenges in communicating climate change. According to Lumosi and McGahey, these are integrating scientific information with traditional knowledge, communicating to people and groups with varying contexts of power, agency and social dynamics, navigating different communication channels, learning processes and modes of knowledge transmission to ensure that necessary information is accessible to marginalized groups. These are further magnified with politics, available policies on climate change, prioritization of climate change problems, among others. One is the lack of training to make climate change relevant and interesting, access to highly technical knowledge to some regions, resources to gather evidences or to attend climate change conferences. Further, Kalayogo emphasized that stories on climate change are usually dismissed as environment stories, neglecting its overall impact to economy, food security, international relations, and among others. This study assessed farmers' use and preference of extension communication channels in Benue, Nigeria. Interpersonal communication channels were generally found to be more available, accessible, and used by farmers than the mass media to obtain information and improved farm technologies. The researcher agrees that in the grassroots level, farmers tend to trust co-farmers when it comes to best practices in farming. Agreeing that experiential learning is the most effective, they believe what other farmers share as they believe their personal experiences. This study assessed the information needs and the gap between awareness and access of information needs of the farmers in Thrissur district, India. The study found out that most important agriculture information needs of the farmers are about government schemes related to loans and subsidies. Significantly, there is a 100% information gap for labor in which awareness is lowest. The study also found that in general, all farmers seek to acquire complete, high quality, and timely information to make decisions related to risk. This study reported that hardly 5% of the farm households in India were able to access the information on animal husbandry, as against 40% on crop farming. It was primarily due to the lack of efficient livestock extension system in place. It also appeared in the study that there is a great need for an effective livestock extension system, especially deployment of information communication technologies to address the most sought information needs of the dairy farmers. This study examined the media habits among women organic farmers and identifies the popular media among them. It shows that majority of the 122 respondents spent 1 hour for every media and 62.29% of which do not access internet. Further, television is the most used type of medium among the respondents. The study, however, failed to establish the relationship between their media habits and organic farming on how these media habits benefited the productivity of their farming. This study indicated that 18% of the only male respondents in Pakistan preferred to watch agriculture-related program in television. 54.3% said that it is not the main source of agricultural information among the farmers. Further, 84.3% said that it does not help them improve their income, although majority of which own television sets. Therefore, there is no beneficial role of television established on farming for the said locale. This study shows the said respondents are aware of the basic indicators of climate change as well as the hazards. Further, farmers have indigenous traditional knowledge to predict and forecast the forthcoming conditions and cultural environmental indicators. Although the study presented the perception and knowledge of farmers in coping with climate change, it failed to present, however, how they obtained such knowledge and information. Furthermore, with the evident heavy dependence on traditional knowledge in coping with the effects of climate change, the study failed to attempt in looking at the up-to-date information resources of the said farmers in dealing with climate change. The uses and gratifications theory of Eliphas Katz says that people use media for their own particular purposes that would gratify their needs. This approach focuses on how people use the media rather than on how the media affects the audiences. The theory suggests that media has no power over audiences. Instead, audiences are highly active in their media usage, seeking out media that will fulfill a certain need and creating their own individual meanings. As a driving mechanism of the theory is need gratification, it has four types: surveillance, diversion, personal identity, and personal relationships. For this study, the type of gratification that fits the chosen respondents is the surveillance gratification. It is when there is a need of an individual or group of individuals who share the same characteristics, such as the backyard livestock farmers in Misamis Oriental, to gratify their need for information on climate change. Under this type of gratification, one would seek information in order to gain cognitive benefit, such as learning and or information and education in order to gain guidance and advice in order for them to cope with climate change in their livestock farming. This model suggests that personal motivations for media use offer gratifications that are expected by the audiences. These expectations are in turn influenced by their beliefs and evaluations of the media. The audience's decision to continue using the media depends on whether or not their beliefs and evaluations are positive or negative. The study shall focus on the communication needs of the backyard livestock farmers in Misamis Oriental in terms of climate change as their gratification sought. After this, farmers evaluate the current situation of their farm. Needs as specific as how-tos, farming equipment, and tools to be used, or as general as a farming system to follow in addressing climate change. The media consumption on climate change among the livestock farmers is the independent variable of the study, as independent variables are presumed to be the cause of any effect, in this case, coping with climate change, or change in the respondents' knowledge, attitudes, and skill, and or practices. The media consumption of the respondents will be measured through their most preferred medium, communication channels, their usual or frequent source of information, and the amount of or the frequency of their exposure on the particular communication channel. The dependent variable of the study shall be the effect of the media consumption on the climate change, which are the gratifications that they obtain through media exposure. Therefore, the dependent variable of the study is how the livestock farmers address climate change through their media exposure. It shall be measured through the specific learning they obtained, guidance, and advice, among others from their information source, channel preference, and amount of exposure on media. Lastly, such variables are intervened by the distinct characteristics of the respondents as the uses and gratifications theory states. The individual differences will lead to different consumption of media content. Further, social and psychological factors influence the individual selection of media content. The said variable will be measured through their socio-demographic profile, such as their age, educational attainment, income, types of livestock animals they currently raise, length of time in livestock farming. The schematic diagram also seeks to determine the relationship between the respondents' media habits and information needs in addressing climate change. After these farmers obtain gratifications based on their media exposure, the indicator of the relationship shall be their individual belief on the effectiveness of the gratifications they obtained. They evaluate, and if not satisfied, they again identify the gap on the information they obtained and shall begin the process again until it is satisfied. Therefore, the researcher comes up with the following hypothesis. The study shall use survey research design. It is used for needs assessments in order to identify the needs of a group who share similar characteristics, such as in this study, the backyard livestock farmers in Misamis Oriental. Further, in order to, in a sense, assess the extent to which information sources to be identified by the respondents have achieved their communication goals. It is by this method that the study will collect information by asking questions. Furthermore, employing questionnaire as a specific technique to be used in survey research design. The respondents of the study will be the backyard livestock farmers of Misamis Oriental, which are operated by a farmer or household. The selection criteria is as follows. The research will determine its respondents through simple random sampling using the Slovin's formula. A 0.10 error of tolerance will be used. The researcher will then conduct a simple random sampling with replacement. The study will use a survey questionnaire to generate data on the media habits of the backyard livestock farmers of Misamis Oriental. Part 1 of the research instrument is a socio-demographic profile of the farmers. Part 2 includes questions pertaining to the media habits and communication needs and the reasons for each on climate change. Part 3 determines if the relationship between their media habits and addressing climate change. The survey questionnaire shall be written in English with Visayan translation. The data gathered will be analyzed using a combination of univariate and bivariate analysis. First is using univariate analysis by looking at the variables one at a time, such as the media habits, socio-demographic profile, and communication needs, in order to describe the data using frequency distribution and percent distribution. In order to analyze relationships between their media habits and coping up with climate change, the researcher will then employ the bivariate analysis. The researcher shall use statistical significance for interpretation using cross-tabulation or contingency table as a tool to explore relationship between these variables.